Want to chime in on what's happening with your favorite KFAN program? Make your voice heard on the Bradshaw and Bryan text line. Let us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That's 64686. Standard message and data rates apply.
Back here, final hour begins 9 to noon at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center, TCO Studios here in Eagan. And here 9 to noon, we are patiently awaiting the arrival of Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell, live each and every Tuesday. Gracious enough, we are gracious to, of course, have him in studio with us on a weekly basis, not only building off of the good things that happened in Nashville over the weekend. What does the coach think about our favorite 8-2 team? But it's Bears week. It's Bears week. Excited tomorrow, as a matter of fact, to chronicle. This is a team now, and the Vikings has won 4 straight at Soldier Field. And some of you are older enough to remember when it was nearly freaking impossible for the Minnesota Vikings to find their way to a W in the Windy City. And anything, if you can imagine it, has happened in the course of some of those games in Chicago. But now, in recent seasons, the Vikings have found their way to 4 consecutive victories. Brian Flores, how's he going to mix up some sort of concoction, a potion, if you will, to stymie, stifle, frustrate, and fool young Caleb Williams? And Bears fans, whether it's losing on Hail Marys, whether it is losing on blocked field goals, Cairo Santos, pure but for the hand of a Packers defensive lineman, this is a team right now that is hungry for a victory, hungry in some ways now after firing their offensive coordinator to find some sort of positivity and motion with this offense. The run game's been changed a little bit. And talking earlier with Lavelli Neal III, there are moments of greatness from Caleb Williams. How they continue to try and build on that and unlock it. The question of now Thomas Brown, the play caller there in Chicago, but everyone on pins and needles, Eberflus probably included, as they have put so much stock into this kid, so much stock into this team in recent years, and now for that not to necessarily play out the way that they would have liked at any standpoint, they are very nervous. They're gripping their sticks, you could possibly say. So looking forward to the head coach joining us here in TCO Studios and having that sort of conversation. Again, an 8-2 team. Does he vibe with the style points aspect of it? We've followed the Lions dropping 50 on all these teams. Meanwhile, it's a 12-7 grinder in Jacksonville. It's not as lopsided as it could have been down in Nashville against the Titans. And how the coach ultimately looks in that. And we'll see. And he's been so good about, in one way or another, being as honest with us as he possibly can. And I think if you listen closely enough to the conversation with the head coach, you're generally going to get to the right answer. But it's always great having the head coach in here, kind of building off of what you may have heard from him speaking to the media yesterday, and getting more as he sits down with PA here in moments, as he is on his way down the hallway.
Yeah, he'll be here in a second
to join us here. Looking forward to that conversation.
Well, it's Bears week,
and then it's Bears week.
It's Bears week. Got a lot of, when Caleb Williams has a 2.6 yards per attempt inside the 20. That requires a lot of collaboration and a lot of meetings and things like that to figure out exactly what's going on here with the old 2024 Chicago Bears. As Kevin O'Connell, head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, joins us now. It's X's and O's. John Ekstrom, how are the wife and kids? Excellent. Good. Hopefully you all had a good time in Nashville. And the head coach joins us now. It's Kevin O'Connell. The Minnesota Vikings ran roughshod on the AFC South and now have 4 of the final 7 versus NFC North teams and all 7 versus the National Football Conference. Great work, by the way, to get to 8-2. What, Kevin, what examples of growing and or maturing and, let's say, evolving have you seen from coaches and players through 10 games?
I think we've won over the 8 games. I think we've won a lot of different ways. And what I mean by that is it has not been perfect, far from it. We're still an improving football team. We're still, at times working through whether it's our inside linebackers being out or, still coping with the loss of Christian Darrisaw and some of those kind of moving parts, TJ's return, Jordan being out early on in the year. I just think we've had kind of a different team every single week, but still staying true to a lot of the principles that we want to stay true to. But at the same time, my job is to push us forward and keep trying to improve and grow. But at the same time, highlighting, winning a real messy, kind of ugly game in Jacksonville, and then coming back and what was a unique matchup for us with a really dynamic front defensively. Knowing the run game would be some tough sledding at times to try to get the movement that we've gotten at times this year up front. To still focus on staying consistent with that, getting some explosives via the play pass. We scored on one, having answers for some of the edge pressures and the dynamic things that they do defensively from a scheme standpoint. Sam coming back off of that Jacksonville performance and really honing in on things that we talked about and having one of his best games of the year. I think we have a mature football team, but yet one that will acknowledge man for man that we all need to continue to improve, because the goal all along has been a progression towards playing our best football at the end of the year while winning games and learning lessons about who and what we are along the way. It's not always pretty. I know I answer a lot of questions about different aspects of certain types of games or how they go, but this is a very each and every Sunday's competitive. PA people are going to make some plays. We've got to continue to make as many as we can, and coaches and players are side by side in lockstep to get that done every single week and keep going in that locker room with the good vibes we've had post game. And getting it done.
Titans fan line for just a second. I was not familiar with Tavondre Sweat.
Why not?
Well, I knew who he was, but I'm just not. Well, I'm never going to watch it critically like you guys. Holy cow, they hit on one, didn't they?
Yeah, he
93 is a nice player.
And I would not discount that player with some of everybody knew physically. He walked into the room at the combine and you knew physically what he could be at this level. It was just the consistency factor of, is he going to be that guy every single snap for an entire game? And I would not discount playing next to Jeffrey Simmons with the way that guy plays football and the physicality and just he's nonstop for 60 minutes. And for a guy that plays like that on the interior, very similar to Dexter Lawrence, where you just don't see him go out of the game all that much. I think that's rubbed off on Sweat a little bit, and now they've got a heck of a duo there inside and two really good edge players in Key and Landry as well. Yeah. So we knew it was going to be a challenge, and we made enough plays. Sam really dealt with some conflict in the pocket at a pretty phenomenal level and made some huge plays for us. Still played smart. Didn't get sped up to the point where when it was clean, we saw him get back to 3 or 4 and some progressions and really drive the ship for us offensively. And I thought it was just a big-time growth performance from Sam.
Okay, Minnesota Vikings defense, #1 in the NFL with rushing yards allowed per game, 74-4. Only have allowed 4 rushing touchdowns, second best to the Chargers, who have allowed 3. Jonathan Bullard, Jerry Phillips, how key have they been to that equation?
Yeah, they're key. They don't get a lot of the headlines with the way Grenard and Van Ginkel and Pat Jones and our edge guys are playing, and obviously when we have Cash and IP back, full like we've had them, you see the importance of the front, because they might not be making tackles, they might not be showing up in the stat sheet a ton, but what they are, PA, is they're eating up blocks, they're holding the line of scrimmage, stopping the back's feet. Well, our fast flow defense or edge setters or cutback players show up. It's team defense, and you need those guys in there. I love the way we've been trying to keep the snap counts somewhat down for Harrison and Bull, using Tillery, Redmond showing up on as a really a growing young player. So that depth in there, even though you can't go into the game with 8 of those guys up.
Right.
You want to keep them fresh, because the stopping the run is about the physicality and the play style along the line of scrimmage. Pair that with what I think Flo does a great job of is, making a lot of things look the same, pressures, not pressures, and really keep people limited in what they can try to attack you with in the run game. We don't see a whole lot of runs. The new flavor last week from Tennessee was a lot of that kind of triple option type look where a couple adjustments later, you saw what happened there in the second half, and they didn't run that again.
Kevin O'Connell, X's and O's, courtesy of 9 to noon, FM 100.3 KFAN. Speaking of the Titans, their head coach Brian Callahan called Jonathan Grenard the most underrated edge in the National Football League, and spent a fair amount of time crediting partially due to Jonathan's willingness to do more than sack the quarterback. And you've talked about this here. Even earlier in the season, before JG had that 3-sack game, you were pointing out some things. And just to hear another coach talk like that for 2 minutes about one guy, I thought that was really, really cool. What are some facets of Grenard's overall game, his all-around game, that you need to win?
Yeah, I think he's got this great combination right now on early downs of playing with physicality when he needs to. Hey, what's my job? I'm an edge-setting outside player. I've got to box whatever run we're going to get in and make sure when HP and Bull and Tillery are doing their jobs, eating up blocks, holding the line, now IP and Cash and Van Ginkel from the backside can run things down, and there's really nowhere to go. So he does that really well, but then every now and again, he'll get the opportunity to beat a puller, and he'll fly in the backfield and make the play. He'll up and under a cross-sift block by a tight end without getting chopped down or without getting cut out. And with all the movement we have, if you're constantly doing your job when you know you got to do it from a movement standpoint, otherwise there can be some huge chunk runs if you get one guy out of their gap. And a lot of times when he's making the play, it's the perfect time. When he's setting up other people with his physicality to make the play, it's the perfect time. And then all that leads to, those third and longer situations where now we can turn him loose, pressure looks. Him and Cashman have been super dynamic on some of those games, really pick stunts. We call them ricochet pick stunts, where people are probably watching at home and seeing Cashman or JG almost show up unblocked at the quarterback. Well, they're working over that tackle and running back, trying to figure out how to dynamically pass those guys off. It's been really cool stuff to watch.
With Andrew Van Ginkel, 8 sacks, 13 tackles for loss. Is he, Kevin, perhaps the most unassuming, humble, quiet, with whom you've worked? I mean, when we talked about the sack last week, he almost looked sad. I thought he was going to get a penalty, but you're like, no, he was upset because he wanted to punch the ball away. When you gave him the game ball in the Vikings.com video, he didn't know what to do.
Yeah. He kind of just gives you that look sometimes, and this real sinister smile. You don't know quite where
he's fantastic.
His mind's at. I love him to death. He's been huge, and really everything. It's so cool, and there's multiple examples of this on our defense. When you envision, you're sitting in a room with Flo and you're talking about potential guys to add to the team, and he's talking about, he lights up and talks about the versatility, the play style. This guy can rush the quarterback. This guy can drop in coverage and make a play on the ball. He's instinct, and he's saying all these things, and I'm like, yeah, where do I sign up? Who do I got to talk to?
Right.
And then you get on the phone with him and you start talking with him. And then before you know it, he's at TCO and he's a Minnesota Viking, and you see it come to life. There's a Cashman, Grenard, Van Ginkel. There's a bunch of examples of that, and it's been really cool to watch. Here's what I would say, because I was thinking about this the other day, knowing you were going to ask a great question about Gink. The only player that I can think of that really rivals him that I've really been around, obviously Harrison Smith for sure, from a cerebral but yet physical play style standpoint, but Cooper Kupp on the offensive side, he would do things sometimes.
That's phenomenal.
We had never talked about it.
Yep.
And he would just understand, and he'd come to the sidelines and you'd say, how'd you know to do that? And he would start talking about leverage, or knowing, hey, it was a 5-man fire zone versus a simulated fire zone where there's only 4 guys coming, understanding where help was in the and he would just say things, and I would be like, that shouldn't be possible. And Gink's kind of like that on the defensive side, and I know Flo and those guys love having him, and the things we can do defensively, even in-game the other day, some of the adjustments, getting him off the ball, shifting it to more of a 4-down front and causing chaos for those guys up front was just wildly awesome to see.
If the Minnesota Vikings defense were a body, it would require a heart and a soul. How important are Blake Cashman and Harrison Smith to that high-end equation, and what fuel do they add to the fire?
Yeah, I think they're so important because of the communication factor. Just as a starting point, it's a check defense. Fans have probably heard me say that before, but what that means is very similar to our offense. It's, play, and a can would just change it to the other call. And there's rules and there's things that flow in the staff by game plan set up. Hey, we're going to run this versus these things, and we're going to get to this versus that. Those guys have total control of that now. So when you see those guys,
what do you mean?
The players on the field they have the rules, and they have, and you've heard Flo say they have the keys, and that's what this defense is all about. So Harrison, Cashman communicating based upon understanding the intent of the offensive formation, because there's only so many things you can do or at least prevent out of certain formations. So when you're leaving yourself susceptible, these players know that they can activate that part of the call to be aggressive. And then when it's more of a, hey, we've got the tight end here, or we've got the back here, or it's this kind of condensed formation, they've got rules every week that change. It's really hard for offenses to get a beat on them. And then on top of that, just the way when the ball is snapped, those guys fly around. I mean, Harry's looked, fantastic all season long, physical. How about the play he made to put the game away the other day? And then Cashman being back, I hope people just feel the calm presence with all of what I just talked about going on.
Yeah.
It's calm. And then it's calm right into chaos for the offense when those guys can be turned loose, and we got all 11 on the same page.
To the offense, Dalton Reisner started his first career game at right guard.
Yep.
After the game, here's what he said to me after the game about the guy he replaced.
Ed Ingram, all week PA, it's even tough to talk about because he just was such a good dude. He prayed for me. He prayed with me. He ran after practice with me. Anytime I asked him a question on anything, he was telling me. Throughout the whole game, he's telling me what I could do better, telling me what I did well. First guy to come up and hug me after the game. One of the first people to come up and tell me that he was proud of me for getting the start. So I'd be remiss if I didn't really just say how much I love Ed and how grateful I am for the start today. It wasn't a perfect performance, but I worked my tail off, and I'm so grateful to have played with the Vikings, and it feels cool to be a part of an 8-2 team.
How about Ed Ingram? I mean, that's culture. That's culture, the trite, overused word in the world, but it's not here. Either is collaboration, and I say that a lot. When even when we're away from here, it's a team first mentality, right?
Yeah, and I think that's really great to hear. I had not heard that, when you make a decision like that and working through it, I believe the communication side of it is not just some word you throw out there at your opening press conference, which does seem about 15 years ago at this point. But I spent a lot of time with Ed last week, and I said, this is a big opportunity for you, not only just a growth moment where you get to take a step back and really see how Dalton operates and really apply the things that you see to when you get your next opportunity, which he's going to. You'll be ready to go and that much better off. This guy's played every game, essentially, when he's been healthy since he's been here. He's played a lot of football.
And all the practices.
And he's never really gotten a chance to sit back and kind of, decompress and just see it, view it with the experience, in his back pocket that he has now. And then the last part of it was, listen, these guys have been there for you every step of the way. My expectation is you're going to do the same for them. And to hear that and to know how Ed handled what was a tough week for him makes me really proud of Ed and confirms everything that I've thought about him from the moment we pulled his card and drafted him.
Okay, Kevin O'Connell, X's and O's, hide the women and children for a second. Here comes hardcore football question. I hope I'm not wrong. When you guys get Darnold out of the pocket via the bootleg, it generally is to the left, despite him being a right-handed quarterback. Is that accurate, and is that usual?
I think a lot of times, just because he's so capable of doing it, plays that maybe historically were one-way plays where you're only attempting those with the quarterback going to his, dominant side when they're rolling to the right. Defenses know that, so a lot of times we get some better edges to get out and get him out on the edge, because he does have, and one of the things that he's always done really at a very, very high level is when he gets out on the perimeter in the keeper game, he's a really good athlete. We've seen that when he's kind of stolen some first downs here and there in the scramble phase, but when he can attack, that throw to Oliver, full speed to his right, it was to the right the other day where Oliver goes for 20 plus on the low cross. I mean, that is as explosive of a play as you'll see, with Josh flying behind the intermediate coverage of the defense, Sam kind of attacking with the ball up and throwing him into a void on the run, perfect throw and catch, really spaced out well. That's all because of Sam's ability to do that. Now, when we go left, like the 4-minute touchdown when we scored to Oliver against the Colts, that's, there's just not 32 quarterbacks making those throws.
I get it.
With that kind of velocity and that kind of athleticism from that kind of base moving to his left. So it's a huge bonus for us. We're always trying to find ways to do that. But that can also help other phases of your offense when those backside chase players are having to play things honest and make sure that they're not letting him out there because they're problem plays for the defense.
32 plays and some big looks for Jalen Naylor at Tennessee. Despite a drop and some drops, I'm guessing your belief in him remains deep, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when you go into the game, you're really thinking that's going to be Jordan Addison in some of those spots.
Oh, yeah.
And I still, in those moments, as a play caller, I know that we've set up a player. I know how coverages are kind of playing out that day. And I called that play thinking that was going to be the dagger. That was going to be the day ender right there to go up 30 to whatever it would have been at the time, 30 to 13. I don't know what the score exactly was at the time, but I know it would have gotten us to 30, and I know that would have been a very tough thing with our defense playing the way they were to come back from. And my confidence level and the route he ran in the moment, off of the motion, winning his leverage, getting over the top and beating his man while Justin was somewhat occupying the backside safety. That was just, at that point, it was pitch and catch in my mind, and my confidence level for Speedy to make that play is still sky high. And I told him that. I told him that on the plane on the way home. Hey, I'm going to come back to you. You're here for a reason. You've made a lot of plays for us.
Yeah.
That one you didn't make. Does that change anything about what your preparation is going to be like this week, or the confidence level that Sam, myself, the coaching staff has for you? Because listen, Jordan could have had a huge day the other day. Cramps happened, and we couldn't quite get him turned over to get back in the game. And Speedy stepped in and made himself available to make those plays. Didn't get it done. He's going to get a lot more ops here down the stretch, just of knowing the confidence level we have in Speedy.
You think if Addison's cramps had not popped up, that he would have gotten behind that double and scored back center of the end zone?
I do think that.
Yeah.
The way
so
they
that was right around when it popped up, right?
Yeah, it was. I think that was his last.
Okay.
The last snap before we went over to the sideline, and he said that he was cramping, and we tried to get him some fluids and other things you do when you're cramping, and we just couldn't quite get him there. But between that throw, which I've seen him think back to Tampa in the opener last year, kind of a similar look. Kirk hit him for that touchdown on a pretty much the exact same play. And then obviously the ball that Jalen ended up dropping is a similar play to what we've gotten him down the field on before. I think Jordan, would have. Do I think he makes those plays? I do. Do I think Jalen Naylor, if I call that same play right now, makes that play?
Yeah.
I do. That's just how I believe in our guys, and that's why they're all here. So
Justin received a game ball after Sunday's win. You're coaching one of the greats ever to play the position in Justin Jefferson, aren't you? I mean, and I've done this a long time, so have you. It's tough for me to say that 2, 3, 4, even 5-ish into it. But it's every single week. I'm like, hey, he just passed Randy Moss. Hey, he just passed Torrey Holt. Yeah. Hey, he's now going to tie HOF Lance Allworth. He's one of the greats in the history of the game already.
I don't know how you can talk about him with what he's accomplished and not start really having those conversations. I may be biased because I'm around him every single day. I absolutely love coaching him. One of my absolute favorites. But I also was a teammate of Randy Moss. I was on the field with Randy Moss, and I have been around a guy that won the Triple Crown, during our Super Bowl year in L.A.
Cooper Cup.
And I just think Justin is he is capable of just about anything in this league. And the thing that I just hope people understand, because I watch football around the league when we get the opportunity to. What he is playing against is different than what anybody else is playing against, week in and week out. I nothing but respect for. We have some phenomenal receivers in our league. We do. But I just hope people understand exactly what he plays against on a week in and week out basis. I promise you folks, it's not coach speak. Yep. It's real. it's, head down to, if you play pickup basketball, head down to the gym and have 3 out of the 5 guys on the court cover you and leave it. That's basically what people attempt to do every single week, find new ways to do it. And Justin doesn't blink. We figure out ways and we work through it together, and he makes play after play for us when we need it.
One Bears question, one talk back, then we're done. Caleb Williams, does he look to run as much as he looks to pass?
I just think that, he's wildly talented when he does get outside the framework of the play. I think you saw him get the ball out of his hands a little bit faster last week. I thought Thomas did a really nice job of, building some things to get the ball out early in the game, get him in a rhythm.
Yeah.
And then
the whole first half, right?
You can tell they don't want to take away that facet of his game because there's some designed runs. There's some things where you can clearly see they're trying to get him out on the perimeter. We talked about Sam in the keeper game. You're going to see a bunch of those plays. And then when he can be that kind of pass run threat, he's been, that's why he was the first pick in the draft. Those plays, his highlight reel from college, you watch it, many of those plays are outside the framework, and he's making a throw that few and far between can make, and that's his superpower, and they're trying to make sure they keep that involved in his game, and defensively we got to make sure we don't allow those opportunities to come for him very often, and then we got to defend what I think is going to be an efficient attack. They're going to try to run it with Swift, and it's going to be a challenge for our defense for sure.
Okay, I'm getting the wrap sign. Let's see. Will Jalen Johnson single Justin? Welcome in, the water's warm. We don't have time for that. Tuesday talkback. Here it is.
Hey, Coach O'Connell. This is Ryan in Michigan. Congratulations on the season so far. We're all really enjoying it. I did want to ask, what are some things you and the organization are doing at this point in the season to keep young J.J. McCarthy developing and connected with the squad? Skol Vikings. Let's go.
Good talk back.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something, when the injury happened, we sat down not only with JJ, but with a lot of the people in this building that are, what I believe to be the top of their professions in their aspects of helping our team. And we really formulated a plan that would be all-encompassing for JJ. In my opinion, the most important thing has always been the medical side of things and making sure that he knocks that out of the park and he's ready to have a great spring when that time comes. And I think we are on a great track to do that. But as he's progressed more and more, he is in the quarterback rooms. I do spend one of my favorite meetings of the whole week on Thursdays. Him and I have lunch together for about an hour, and he's basically digested some of the game plan. He may have questions about that. He may have questions about a lot of times he's asking me questions about, hey, when you're watching tape, what are you really looking for when you came up with this play? Or knowing we're playing against this defense and we've got, this coaching point this week, where did you see that? Have you seen that before? And I'm bringing up clips. I'm showing him, tape. I'm basically taking him, to the deep cuts of how we build things each and every week because he's a very, very smart kid. And he wants to know information. He's hungry for it. So I think that's been a huge part of it because that's not always something. I bet if you went around the league to some of these guys who are playing that were drafted kind of right around where JJ was, I bet they would all say they just wish they had a little bit more time.
Right.
They had a little bit more of that, information superhighway without the pressure of a 12 noon game on Sunday. So we've tried to build that as if it truly is a methodically built redshirt year to where it may be his first start when he takes the field for the first time for us, but not without a lot of time on task and purposely driven kind of plan for him. And I think he's doing really well with it. We've got to stay on top of it, and then it's going to be something that will be really, really exciting for everybody when we get him back healthy, ready to roll.
Great job. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Kevin O'Connell, hopefully his team beats the Bears. It'd be 4 in a row, 4 KO. 9 to noon continues after this.
Welcome back. Final couple segments, 9 to noon. Thanks again to Kevin O'Connell and his weekly appearances at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. But another coach joined and actually kicked off the show with PA. Head coach Chris Finch, Minnesota Timberwolves, brought to you weekly, Second Harvest Heartland, and Prize Picks. They chatted this morning. And, I guess take it away. PA, of course, always starts every interview with love you. I know you're an Eagles fan. Wolves back on the right track. And good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you doing?
Things are quite well, and things seem to be going better for you than the last time we spoke last week when you were in the Pacific Northwest. Now, after beating Sacramento and Phoenix, is the overall product edging closer to being as good as you know it can be?
Yeah, I think we're getting there. We've seen signs of it. It's, the inconsistency still is sniping at our heels, if you will. We've got to figure out some things defensively, kind of got to get that defensive and personality back that we had last year. But we are resilient. We are finding ways to win games, take a bunch of punches, come back. We're showing a lot of grit in different ways, but we just need to be more consistent. And that sounds pretty generic, but it's really what it is. For a little bit there, it's kind of like one night it's maybe transition defense, next night it might be rebounding, could be pick and roll on the third night. So it's not like we have one glaring problem over and over. It's just kind of a different thing every night, which is sometimes lack of focus and maybe just not adjusting the personnel or game plan fast enough.
But that they all may be details, and the overarching product eventually will get to assumedly where you want it to be. Those are a lot of details. Holy cow! Are you able to sleep at night?
No. The quick answer is no. No coach sleeps. I'm sure you walk the halls out there at the Vikings facility. Those guys are probably zombie-like on any given game day.
I thought it was really cool, not only the way you beat Phoenix, but the first guy to greet Julius Randle after the walk-off winner was Anthony Edwards. What have you noticed very early, very, very early, about how those two respect each other and enjoy sharing?
Yeah, they very much have an appreciation for each other's work ethic and toughness. They both love to put the work in, and they play with a physical toughness and a mental toughness that they kind of see in each other. Julius has done a great job of coming in here and trying to figure out ways to make Anthony better, with his playmaking particularly. He also is a good compliment for him in that when the ball, if they're going to put two people onto Ant and the ball's thrown to Julius, he's a quick decision maker in that regard, and plays with great gravity, gives us another option to close games with. And so teams can't just load up on one guy. So that's been great. I think Ant is still figuring out, Julius's game in some ways and how he can, accentuate that. Been very, very pleased with their early chemistry.
I know practice, with the practice time you get this week is first and foremost on your mind. Then you get to the Toronto Raptors. But and coaches generally don't prefer to cast their gaze far down the road. But this just hit me. Think about it. It's not if you are in big games and big spots like in the postseason. I think it's a matter of when. But how great is it going to be in a tightly knit game, minute and a half to go, and you have those options who are Edwards and Randle, who are both very, very comfortable trying to win games.
Yeah, they both can get to their spots. They play with the physicality of I'm really pleased with the way Anthony's been closing games this year. He's been mixing up his shot selection, his shot creation for his teammates. He's been going quick. He's been reading the defense. So that growth was something we had to be much better at coming into the season. And then Julius, just his ability to make tough shots, get to the free throw line, also create for his teammates. And I think it's just about making the right play in those moments. And when you have two guys that can create offense for themselves and for their teammates, you're kind of spoiled for choice.
Let's put the Sacramento win and the Phoenix win together. They couldn't slow the Kings roll late and were slow to start Sunday against Phoenix, but you won both games. So how do you read into that? Defensive fundamentals?
Yeah, I think the Kings game, I thought we did a great job of controlling that game all the way through the first, 3 quarters for the most part. When we got up 20, we lost our focus. We lost our edge. We started trading baskets, and that's a bad place to be because if you hit a dry patch and the guy gets hot, like we saw, you never know when that thing ends for them. So, we should have closed that game out. We got a lot of good looks. We've struggled with some offensive scoring droughts in the last 10 days or so that have really hurt us, and it's affected our defense at times, which is again adds to the inconsistency we've been discussing. But we did a good job of taking their punches. We could have easily folded. We came back out in the overtime. We managed to get enough stops on Fox to just kind of stem the tide and make big shots. Then in the Phoenix game, physically, it's one of those games where when the game starts and you see your team playing, you're like, they're kind of not all there. Just physically, coming back from the West Coast, early start, that's a tough thing to find your energy. But as the game went on and on, we just hung in there, gave ourselves a chance to make a run at it. Did a really good job of kind of shutting Booker's water off, and then offensively we found a great groove. So the momentum, kind of opposite games, if you will, because we didn't control the game for most of the time, but we hung in there. So we won both games in 2 completely different ways,
right?
Which is impressive in its own right, but it still points to a lot of work to be done.
Hear the entire Chris Finch interview by podcasting 9 to noon at KFAN.com. Thank you, Prize Picks, for sponsoring our weekly interviews with Chris Finch. 9 to noon closes after this. You just heard with that sports update, the top 4 college football teams, and Penn State University was one of them. Now PJ Fleck has the PJ Fleck Show coming up next, and I'm sure they'll talk a lot about that. Tanner Morgan, who was the quarterback for PJ's Golden Gophers in that 2019 memorable victory over Penn State, I believe he's going to join 9 to noon tomorrow. Courtney Cronin, who covers the Bears for ESPN and ESPN.com. She should be on the radio show tomorrow. And likewise for John Hines, coach of the Minnesota Wild, will start the show with Hines O. Start the show with Hines O. So that's all tomorrow. And that Penn State victory in 2019, I'm not pretending to be an elite Bronco Nagurski, Sky Yuma mind. It's top 2, top 3 all time for me, going way back to when Glenn Mason beat Penn State University at Happy Valley, that team that had Courtney Brown and LeVar Arrington. Yeah. And also a Mason-led victory at Columbus, Ohio, against Jim Tressel's Ohio State Buckeyes. A 2019 victory at what was TCF Bank Stadium. That was phenomenal. Hope you have time to listen tomorrow. For Nordo and Max Fuller, I'm Paul Allen. Thank you for listening to 9 to noon from the Vikings headquarters, courtesy of Sukup and Sukup.com.
Podcast today's Paul Allen Show, or listen back to previous show and interviews by going to the iHeartRadio app or KFAN.com.